Good afternoon and welcome to a rather obviously titled segment. A segment that's specially designed to showcase the backstories of individuals who have made an impact. During this hour, we will delve into a conversation around stories that need to be told of modern day icons. Luminary Learning Solutions crafted this segment so you, our audience, can be truly inspired. I'm Anton Thayalan, the Chief Evangelist at Luminary Learning Solutions, and will be your co-host. Joining me this afternoon is our founder and destiny architect, Vidusha Nathavitharana. Together, we will take you through an hour of free-flowing discussion. In today's segment, it is my privilege and honor to introduce Dilani Alagaratnam. At the time of her retirement from John Keel's group in December 2019, she was a member of the Group Executive Committee of John Keel's Holdings, the president with overall responsibility for human resources, legal and secretarial, corporate communications, CSR, sustainability, and enterprise risk management, and group sourcing function of the group. She also overlooked the businesses of John Keel's office automation. She was a director of Union Assurance PLC and several unlisted companies within the John Keel's group at the time of her retirement. A lawyer by profession, she has been with John Keel since 1992 and is a law graduate and a holder of master's degree in law. Currently, she is a chairperson of the Legislation Subcommittee of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, a director of CCC ICLP Alternate Dispute Resolution Center, and a director of Women's Fund Asia. Among the many accolades she has received, she has been judged the Career Woman Role Model of the Year by Women in Management at their Professional and Career Women Award, and as one of the most powerful women in the country by Echelon magazine celebrating Sri Lanka's leading business women. On that note, good afternoon, Dilani, and welcome to the show.
Good afternoon.
Well, before we dive in, what I'm amazed by is 28 years at John Keel's holding group. My first question to you, what made you join John Keel's group?
Well, I would say it was quite an accident. It was not a job I intentionally sought. I was earlier working with Justice Mark Fernando as his junior, and after he was elevated to the Supreme Court, I was working from home, doing some work at the university, and generally not doing very much with myself. And then one of my previous lecturers sort of asked me whether I would like to join John Keel's. And at that stage, since I was not doing anything very much and the work sounded pretty interesting, I thought, why not? Of course, there was another reason. I think I have said this in public forum. That is that when I was asked to join, my husband and I were building a house, and we had just finished almost everything except the last few stages, and we needed the money. And I thought, yeah, why not? Work is interesting. I need the money. Let me go and see what it's going to look like. That's what it is.
No, that's fine for starters, but as Anton 28 years is a long time to be in an organization, Dilani, and it's not often that you find people with that kind of tenure. So starting out the way you did is perfectly fine. What made you stay?
I'm sorry, Vidusha?
So 28 years is a pretty long time to stay in an organization. Yes. And starting out the way you did is, well, perfectly fine. What made you stay that long?
It is the work, actually. It was so interesting. because we were in a diversified company. And right at the beginning, as soon as I joined, actually I joined because they were going into new things in 1992, and that is where we really started growing into every field, as it were. So I was involved in almost every transaction, and of some of the big things which JKH is proud of today. So it was, every day was so interesting, and also because of the diversity of the work I was involved in, which is mainly and was legal right at the beginning. For a day, I might be looking at plantations to food to IT to so it was just a roller coaster ride. And being the person I am, that's the kind of thing that keeps my adrenaline going. And so every day, I haven't had a day in my whole career where I said, no, tomorrow I do not want to go to work. I enjoyed every minute of it.
You also kind of veered from legal to many other spheres. How did those come about? Were those intentional, or did it just come to you? And if it just came to you, why did you accept? Because they're so different to what you would normally do.
So for 10 years of my life, it was I was concentrating on the legal and the secretarial aspects. Then in year just before Mr. Barendra left as the chairman, myself and three others were invited to sit at the group executive committee at that time and contribute in whatever in our respective fields. And also one of the things that occurred at that time was that we looked at bringing a consultant from outside, that namely Boston Consultancy Group, to look at our portfolio, reprofile the company, and also look at the HR processes, because we felt, and what we were at that time, our discussions, our on where JKH wants to be in the future. Obviously, one of the main things that came up was the need for us to have structured performance management systems, things to incentivize people to work, to engage them. So we got Boston Consultancy to come and look at all this. And invariably, not invariably, actually, they looked upon me to drive that in the organization. So I said, yes, I will do the project. And I didn't agree to take on HR. I thought somebody else will take it and run there after the project was over. But then at that time, my seniors sort of coaxed me. Actually, there are a lot of coaxing had to be done. I didn't want to take it up so much because my pet area and my love was the law. I felt that maybe I might veer away from the law and the incisiveness and things that are required for the law if I go into less, in a more, less structured area of HR. So I was worried about that, but I think the word I should use is maybe mentor, to say, look, if you want to you don't want to be merely a lawyer. You want to be a leader. You want to lead. So to do that, you must have more all-rounded capabilities, and you should take this and run. You will enjoy it. So it was with much trepidation I took it over at that time, and I loved it. I enjoyed it, and I suppose it also exposed to me that there are certain things about me I didn't know myself. Thereafter, of course, whether it is sustainability and risk and group initiatives, CSR, all that was given to me, and I did say no, and I just took it and ran. Again,
Why
I
though?
had a bit of a hesitation when it came to this last year when I looked after a business, and it's a trading business, which as Samsung distributors in Sri Lanka, John Keys Office Automation. There I was a bit hesitant. I mean, wow, at this late stage, why do I have to run a company? Of all things. That again, my chairman at that time, I will hold your hand for 3 months. You come and tell me, and I will tell you where to look, how to look, what you should do. And with that, shall I say, the assurance and reassurance that I will be guided and supported, I took it on. So there was a bit of hesitation at that stage, and earlier when HR came along. But I think all in all, I think my advice to anybody is when opportunity knocks, don't look back. I think it made me what I am, not only, I think as a person, it really made quite a positive impact on me.
But isn't it a huge risk though? I mean, lots of people, when they're at a certain stage in their careers, don't necessarily want to take that risk because it's fine if it goes right. But there are always risks when you take on something new, and it's not something that you were trained to do. I mean, you were you came from a different profession, and HR was a completely different thing. Trading was a completely different thing. At least if it was something related to it, then it's something else. But when you take on something that you're not necessarily is that your background is from, why did you take that risk? Given that you were doing so fantastically well anyway.
Yeah, I think I took the risk knowing that I'm not alone, because JKH is all about teamwork. None of us are alike, and we play to each other's strengths. And we have open doors, and at any time we can ask anybody for help. And to me, I have never been hesitant to say that I don't know something. My whole thing is to tell anybody, I also tell everyone that, look, you have to be open to learn. Every day, even today, I learn. Every day I learn something from somebody. It need not be somebody, everybody knows or famous. It could be the, smallest guy around. I learn. So I think if you're open to learning, and when you have we are somewhat shielded by some of the risks by the people you work with. It's not only the seniors, it's the rest of the team. I think you think you have mitigated some of the risks you spoke about, Vidusha.
Just, just a quick follow up on that. It's also a lot to take, isn't it? In the sense of the volume of work. It's not just the responsibility that you have, but it's the sheer volume of work. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of hours. And you were married, you have a family. That couldn't have been easy. So, how did you juggle that?
Well, yes, it seems like a lot of work. Vidusha, yes, it seems like a lot of work. But it is how you organize yourself. And I am quite a structured person. I have tasks and task driven. So I sort of go on doing those things. I have a larger plan, but I know to the day what I need to do. So that is one thing. The other thing is the team. And I do as I have never believed in looking over everyone's shoulder all the time. Maybe at the initial status I did in my career, because I wanted everything perfect, and I did it. But along the way, I knew that I can't do this. I have to trust the people to do the right thing, and that trust has not been broken. I have my checks. I know how to look at it, and I know they can come to me if there's a problem, there's a major trade smash up. They can come to me, and then we can sort it out. So I set out the expectations, and I allow people to run it the way they want and deliver the results as required.
I've got a question on that, if I may, Vidusha, before you continue. Dilani, I mean, Vidusha was right, because leaving your comfort zone from one field and then taking on so many within the group is a risk. But clearly also it has its challenges, it has its benefits. Can I ask, what would you say was your biggest, can I say, mistake that you would call it, if it was that? And then how did you kind of identify it? How did you kind of overcome it? What was the lesson from that?
I don't think there is only one mistake. There have been quite a few along the way, but something that still bothers me is what happened to us at John Keel's with the Lanka Marine Services case. That, even today, suddenly, jolt me, why did this happen to us? We didn't make any mistakes. We did the right thing, but we didn't expect the judgment of that nature we got. It was terrible for every one of us. So that is something that sort of continues to haunt me in a sense. But otherwise, okay, I mean, we make mistakes every day. I mean, nothing, we move on, we learn from them, and we try to do better and avoid such things in the future. Main thing is to keep learning and do whatever we do better every time. So that's my mantra.
If I can just probe a little bit on that, because it was one of those landmark decisions that was made. And yes, it certainly was a jolt, I think, across the board. How do you put something like that behind you and still face the future with confidence? How do you shake it off?
Yeah. We have to put things behind, because there's no point, crying over spilt milk. We have to move on. And I think it is something not only in business, but in our personal lives also, we need to move on. We can't just think of what it was yesterday and move on. Yes, things were tough. As I said, we learned from it. We don't do some of those mistakes we did at that moment, which in good faith. So as being lawyers, I think documentation is important. Sometimes you trust people to do the right thing, but sometimes, there's certain things that we have learned along the way. And yeah, I think we have to put it back, because we can't wallow in what happened in the past. We have to move on, otherwise we will be there in the same place.
Can I just kind of probe you a little bit on that aspect of it? Because a lot of times, I think, especially when organizations start out, not so much large corporations like John Keel's, because they have structures around this, they have risk mitigation aspects around this, they have protocols around it. But a lot of businesses, especially medium to large scale, don't necessarily look at the documentation part too much. And also, in this modern day and age, we look down upon simple protocols sometimes around documentation, especially legal documentation. And because of that, make horrible mistakes. Can you just take us through on that? Because I think that's a very, very important aspect that you just touched. A lot of people don't take documentation seriously, shouldn't they?
Documentation is very important, I think. I think that is one of the things I learned right from the day one when I started my legal career. And in fact, I think even today, the legal department will make sure that every scrap of paper is in a file. Because there are times when somebody asks, why did we make this decision? And as lawyers, it may be a compromise which we have made, but somebody would ask, 20 years later, why did we make this decision? I mean, who made this decision? Who took this call? So we have the habit, even of the internal memos, we keep a track of it so that anytime if somebody looks at a file, they will understand how the chronology of the events. Because we see it today and we forget because we move on to the next one and the next one. So documentation is important, so that documentation in a manner in which it's not only you who can understand, you who has been in it, but anyone coming cold can understand what has really happened and why we made those calls. So I think it is all very important, and it's something I think we instill in every lawyer that we need to do that.
No, a quick follow-up on that, especially for the people who are listening in, because again, this is, and I love what you said, because it's not only for you to understand, it's for anyone to understand. So documentation is not just simply filing something, but it's filing something in a structured manner, which can be referred and referenced later on. I think the British got that right, isn't it? I mean, they made sure everything was documented, and because of that, we have a lovely chronology of history, good and the bad. But again, lots of organizations don't do it. Do you have any tips for fledgling organizations on how they can go about documenting? Any best practices, anything that you can share which is not proprietary, any basics that will be helpful?
Well, I think something they could possibly do is to keep a chronology of events. Maybe not necessarily all the documentation, but the date and what transpired, and what is written, what is not, or where it can be found. As lawyers, I always used to tell my team that first thing you do is you do a chronological sequence of everything related to that matter. And you will be amazed what you can find. You have solved the problem without looking at documents. Look at the chronology, and then you know where things are good and where they are not. So maybe even if they can't have this documentation, of course nowadays you have the ability to store these in a soft form, but those also sometimes are challenging, because you may put it in a CD, but you may not know where to find the CD. So it is therefore very important that you document, and it takes time, but it is something you develop over years. It is the discipline of putting it down. When you close a file, at least write it down.
Veering from the work environment, can I ask you a very personal question? With your permission, please. Lawyers by profession, especially when they have been doing it for a long while, tend to have certain traits, isn't it? And you mentioned one of them: discipline, documentation, making sure everything is in order, structure. Those are things we generally associate with the legal profession, isn't it? Are you like that at home as well?
Yes. Yes, Vidusha. I think I'm quite structured, and I still run with my task list for the day. And it's not because I want to get the stuff done, but at the end of the day, the satisfaction I have got it done.
Fair enough. Very well.
So I'm pretty structured, and yeah, sometimes it can be a bit of a problem. At the same time, it can help me, juggling work and, my daughter and, rest of the family, my poor parents. So
it does help, isn't it? Yeah. Go on, Angel.
Sorry, I know Vidusha will get into this in a little bit more deeper, but I'm just listening to you, Dilani, and 28 years, and then most of it being in leadership roles, right? And Vidusha asked an interesting one. Are you taking your traits home as well? But as a leader, right, I'm sure you've built relationship along the way in that, that tenure that you spent with, individuals that you worked with. How do you make difficult decisions with those that you've become very close to within the organization, having been there? I'm sure you've gone around in being different departments, and then you would have worked with people and you've come back to manage them, etc. But when it comes to making difficult decisions, how do you kind of separate, can I say, feelings and emotions out of it?
Anton, I think my training as a lawyer helps me in this, because then I stick to the facts and try to take that emotion out, especially when people are close to you, you have worked with them and all that. I mean, in any case, you try to take that emotion out, because you know that you are doing the right thing. As long as you're doing the right thing, you are comfortable that this is what it should be, then you need to keep emotions aside. And being in my position, I mean, I have had to do many of those things where, not pleasant. It doesn't, when you come home or at the end of the day, you are upset about it. But at the same time, I know that I have done right by me and by the organization, by me personally, because I as long as it doesn't transgress my value system, then I'm comfortable. But so it's in a work environment. So you can be misunderstood. I think sometimes people think that I'm very tough when it comes to these things. But I do appear tough, but people who know me, they know that is all the facade, in the sense, because I feel for everything. And the decisions, when we make those decisions, also we talk about it, and then there's consensus building, and then only we do this. So it's not something you do alone. You always work in a team. You understand the various nuances. So one thing at my work at JK, it's something I really enjoyed, was that to be able to work with people who know much more better than I do. And so that has been absolute privilege, and it has helped me in making these tough calls at times.
Could I just probe on that a little bit? Because, but it is important to make those tough decisions, isn't it? Because a lot of the time inside organizations, we shy away from making those tough decisions, much to the detriment of the organization, either because we don't want to hurt somebody, or because, I don't know, for whatever reason, we don't sometimes take those tough calls. It is important to take them, isn't it? Even though you're misunderstood.
Vidusha, let me rephrase the question. So your question is whether the toughness that a company needs to make tough decisions and somebody has got to do it. Is that what it is?
Yes, even if it is unpleasant at that moment in time, and even if you're misunderstood for it.
Yes, as I said, after I make that decision and we do that, what needs to get done, then when you sit back and you look at it and you feel that you have not been unfair to that person, then you're okay. And I'm fine with it. Though, the person could have been my best friend. But the fact is, have I been fair? Has the organization been fair? So that is the question. So the fairness, yes, it's a balance at the end of the day. You have to balance the interests of the organization, interests of the individuals, and organization comes first. Definitely in a sense, though individuals do matter, but certain times when they are all running neck to neck, you have to take the organization side.
And how do you deal with somebody falling out with you because of it? Because oftentimes when you're at leadership positions, you take those tough calls. Not everyone agrees, and sometimes people take it very personally. And sometimes friendships that has been endured for some time, over a long period of time, sometimes fall out because of it. How do you deal with that?
Again, you're not very clear, but
sorry. No, so let me try it again. When you have to make those tough decisions, sometimes friends fall out, and sometimes people take it very personally. How do you deal with those kind of situations?
That's a tough question, Vidusha. Vidusha, it's a tough question. There is no one way how you handle it. When people do take things personally, it depends on the personality and the people who have to deal with it. So you need to I don't think one size fits all. It depends on the situation, because sometimes people wouldn't want to listen to you. Sometimes you try to reason with them. Sometimes you get third parties to speak with them. And sometimes you try to help them even after they leave the organization by, making sure that they're all right. So there are various ways in which you do it. But I always, it's not as if you have lost a friend, but it becomes a strained relationship. So you're not, if you meet a person like that, you have dealt with very closely and we have to part ways, then it doesn't mean that when I see them somewhere, I turn the other way and go. I speak with them. I may not be a friendly encounter, or in the sense of, no one has been rude to me, but there could be reservations. So I really can't give you an answer that would that can be used as a tool.
I think you've answered the question, because one of the things that we need to be able to be okay with is that these things will happen, and if you shy away from it, you can't do your job right. And I think that's an important lesson to learn if you are taking on senior roles. You can't be the populist, isn't it? Always. It'll be nice to be popular, but there are enough and more circumstances when you take unpopular decisions, which is right by the organization, and you must be okay with it. If not, you shouldn't actually take on a senior role. So you've answered the question. Thank you for that. But one last thing on that is about, especially when it comes to large organizations, building relationships isn't easy. And and I know you from John Keel's days, so I know where you sat and your office. And most of the people that you dealt with, especially from the HR front, are scattered all over the place. How do you maintain relationships in a large organization like that? Because I know you've made the effort, and I know I've heard lots of stories about how you do this, but I do want to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to say. How do you maintain those relationships, given that it was a large organization?
So, Mitosha, what is required for work is sort of organized in a structured manner. How we have organized ourselves within, say, for example, the HR structure. So those have reporting lines, those have meetings, there's are decision-making powers have been delegated. So you can keep a pulse check as well as regular meetings, periodic meetings with the relevant people gives you a fair view of what is going on and what needs to get done. And the other thing is, as I had said earlier, also the open door policy at JKH, which allows people to pick up a phone and ask any question. My 360s, of course, sometimes people used to say that I should visit them more often in the businesses. It used to come, and I must confess, I didn't do too much about it because sometimes I just don't have the time to go to all the business units. But I try to, whether it's, to the HR community meetings or our sector meetings or business unit meetings, our, sort of the other various events where I would always make it a point to be there. So try to get closer to the people, their families, understand what they're all about. So have a little chat after a meeting. So that's the kind of thing. I may not have had the opportunity to, know very much the personal side of everyone's life, but I attempt to do so. And I try to remember names. I must tell you something. One of the people who absolutely amazed me when it comes to names was Mr. Balan.
I've heard this.
He could remember your spouse's name, your child's name, and I used to be amazed. I always wanted to emulate him, right? So sometimes I write names down, but I was not even halfway there. And it's something, I think it's an amazing thing. It puts people at ease. I think if they could cultivate that habit of really knowing someone's name, knowing their spouse or, friend or their child's name, what they're doing, and keep a tab of it at least, even if you have to, of course, do it with your team, but the greater team, I think it's a great asset for anybody. So those are some of the things which I believe I did, and unless you know more about me than I do, from what you said.
No. I used to hear stories along the corridors, which are no more at John Keel's. But when we used to visit Glennie Street, they would actually turn around and say, you know what, Dilani is coming today. And it was a big deal because, like you said, that there was an anticipation that you would come, and ever so often, on a day that you haven't come as promised, they would turn around and say, "Damn it, she didn't come. We were so looking forward to this because it was a big deal." So I know that you made the effort to come, and people would talk about it afterwards and say, "I know she said this, she said that. By the way, you should be doing your training this way," and so on and so forth. Used to be a part of the conversation every time we were at Glennie Street. So that's why I asked the question. But when you can't make time, what do you do? Because there's a lot on the plate. How do you make sure that you pacify people, so to say? Because it's a lot of expectation, isn't it, to kind of have? and people expect it of you.
Vidusha, did you use the word pacify?
Yes, pacify in the sense of you can't always come and visit them, isn't it? And you can't always make the time. So how do you pacify people when you really can't give them that time?
Yeah. So, Vidusha, I think if I said I was going to be somewhere, I would be there. Won't happen that I won't, unless there's something, something really, something very important takes that time, I would be there. I don't think there's a time where I have sort of said I was going to do something and not done it for them. So they know that. But I think the frequency of visits could have been better. Maybe I should have increased the ante on that. But it's not a case of pacifying. I think as long as they know that you're concerned, you know what they're doing, and you know the good things they're doing, and you give them a pat on the back and say, well done. And they know, I think that is what is important. The fact that you're aware of what they're doing. What are the difficulties they're going through? What are their achievements? How is it going for them? If you are empathetic towards them and they are aware that you know, I think that matters. I think that helped me to possibly pacify them.
Can I, on that note, can I veer again to personal life? Are you a tough mom?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. I'm the tough one, and I'm the tough one, and my husband is the one who, does the nicer things in life, doing the wrong things and all that.
Is that difficult being the disciplinarian at home? Is that difficult being the disciplinarian at home? Is it, or is that something that you do comfortably?
No, I must say that I don't do it comfortably. Actually, I can discipline 40,000 people, but I find it difficult to get something done at home, discipline wise. So it is a tough call, I tell you. And I'm the one who ends up wounded.
True. That's true. I share that pain because I'm the tough one at home myself. And 9 times out of 10, if you really kind of put your foot down and you see, my son, I think, gets hurt by what I say a lot more than my daughter. My daughter, I think, has a thicker hide. But my son is pretty sensitive, and you see it in his face, right? I mean, you've reprimanded him and you see it in his face, that the hurt and the, sometimes they give you that look to say, why did you do that to me? Or why did you say that to me? Or something like that. And you end up actually feeling a lot worse than you ever thought possible under normal circumstances. So it's tough work. I do want to probe a little bit on that, because I think being a mom and being a leader at work can take a toll, because it's a full-time job, isn't it? I mean, when you're at work, you take responsibility, and you have to lead teams. When you come home, especially if you are the disciplinarian, and especially if you are the tough one, you have decisions to make there too. Where do you wind down? How do you wind down?
Well, winding down. As I said, I love work. So when people talk about work life, for me, work is somewhat like part of my life, because it gives me so much of satisfaction. Yeah, so winding down, because I don't, again, this myth, you think that as a leader and handling all these functions, I don't have much time. But I do have time. I always tell my team, because I start work early. My lunch is like 10 minutes, which I know is not so good, but I should do better than that. 10 minutes, and I work right through, and I try to leave office by 5:30 the latest. I am available, but it is all about getting yourself organized and doing what you need to do during the day. And also, I think when you're doing something, make sure that you do it right. You don't have to go and revisit it again. That takes time. So I had time for my family, I think, of course, after 5:30 or whatever. But there were times right at the beginning, like I didn't have any time. That again depends on your life and what you are doing at that point of time. And giving 10 to 12 hours a day continuously for about 2 years when we are doing the SAGT project. I mean, because like 4 years we worked, but I think the last 2 years we would have worked 10 to 12 hours every day without, on an average. And not even in our offices, in Ports Authority offices and various places. So during that time, I didn't like feel again, okay, I felt the need sometimes, I need a vacation, I need to get out of this. But what I tell people is there are times in your life where you need to do that. You have to do those extra hours. You can't shy away from that. Because I believe that where I am today, I think, is on account of the work I put in for that project. It is just 3 of us, former chairman, Mr. Ratnam, Anisha Kumar Swami, Group Finance Director, and I. The 3 of us, we did it for JKH and over the years, and we worked so hard. So I think it was a recognition that, I can take that, the pressure and take that workload, the pressure, I think, in more or less, that's what it was. It's a pressure of work, because you're working with multi-parties, you're working with the government, you're working with, I mean, so many stakeholders in it, international and local. So I think, I mean, at that time I worked and I lost out a lot of things during that time personally. And but I think the young ones should not think that they need to work 8 hours, run home and look for this life. When they're young, they need to work hard. And I always again tell people, when at JKH, I used to tell them, look, you have a neighbor in India where every other person is a graduate, and maybe all of them are, and they work more than one job a day, and they take so much time in commuting. And then in Sri Lanka, we are spoiled for choice. Don't look for this time at this stage of your life. Do your work, do more. Try to see whether you can do something more. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind in this world.
I'm gonna jump in and ask. I have 2 questions that I've been wanting to ask, but I'm also careful not to, or rather mindful not to disturb the flow, because it was really nice listening to you, Dilani. But I'm kind of taking you back to your career, and also for the benefit of the audience, right? Can 28 years and being in those positions, and I kept saying this, you must have hit a rock bottom at least once in that tenured period, right? Can you tell us about it? And I'll have my second question after that.
Anton, can you repeat the last bit, please?
Sorry. So I said in your career of 28 years, there must have been a point where you've hit or you felt that you've hit rock bottom. And as a leader, that's important to understand that. So I'm just, for the benefit of the audience, I'd like to hear from you if there was such a point in your career.
Fortunately for me, Anton, I don't think there was such a train smash as it were, other than what I mentioned, that LMS thing which keeps
Sure.
sort of it's there at the back of my mind that this happened. But really, no. I mean, there have been times when I have been down because what have we had to do again? Something that Vidusha spoke about earlier, when you have to talk with people about their performance, or take difficult decisions. Those are times where you feel rather low, and but nothing that I could not come out of, or it took time for me to come out of. I took it in my stride and sort of told myself, okay, this is the real world. I mean, you can't shy away from this. This is where you are. You need to do these things, or you had to do these things. Yeah. But yeah, tell me.
Interesting though, but I like the approach. I like the attitude. I guess the follow-up question to that is this, right? Success, and you had a successful career. Success comes at a cost, and we were at a conversation earlier on, and we were told by a certain professional that when you're in certain professions, you can't be married. You've got to be single in order to be in that profession, because it requires your time, your commitment, your dedication, and all of that. And yet here you are, married, stepping into John Keel's and beginning what is now known as the 28-year beautiful career. And you've taken on so much and more, right? And then from what I understand, you still take on a lot more. But can I ask you, what did you give up in order to achieve that level of success?
Difficult question. I never thought about it. Maybe, but it's not. I don't want to say it's because of the job, but maybe, one of the regrets possibly which I have is that we have only one child. So it would have been nice if we had more, but again, I can't put it down to my job. It is not my job. It's all about, it's all about me. So it's not, it's a tough one, Andrew. Maybe one other, maybe in the future, I think about the question and possibly give you an answer.
No. The fact
very
that
much. I have my holidays. I love to travel. I do that. So
no,
I have done those things.
I think the fact that you had to think about it is the answer itself. And I think you said it beautifully, because I often say that if this whole equation of work-life balance happens only if you're in a job that you don't like. Work-life balance doesn't come into the equation if you love your job, love what you do, and equally love your time at home. Then you're just living life, isn't it? It's everyday life, and then you're fine with it. So I think that was your answer, and you're living proof of it. I just have one last question. I'm mindful of time, and I'll pass it on to Anton for closing remarks afterwards. I just have one last question, and I didn't want to ask this till the end because I didn't want it to be around it. But Dilani, I often ask this of females, and this is not to make it into being a gender conversation, but I do want to address that elephant in the room, because when you joined, the time you joined, it wasn't common for females to be at the forefront of the corporate life. It still isn't, and there's a long way to go, I think, for most organizations. But you stepped into it during a time when probably it was very, very rare to see a female at the helm of an organization, at a boardroom level. Any advice for aspiring young females about how to make it to the top?
Vidusha, advice on how to
get to the top as a female, because the challenges you will face as a female would be quite different to a male.
Okay, firstly, I want to tell you that at the time I joined John Kills, we had our group finance director who is on the main board, was a woman, and possibly she was the first woman in the the top 20 companies of Sri Lanka, only a woman director. So having women was not something that is totally unknown to John Kills. There were many women, in fact, leading some of the businesses. So that was not a problem. And one thing is, I never thought of myself as a woman and sort of work through my, when I went to work, I went to work. It was not because I was a woman. The fact that I woman became is a woman is not was not something I thought about even at that stage. I just did what I had to do, and one thing again is the culture of John Kills and all that helped. But your question is what is the advice to others? One thing is, it is nice if you can join an organization. Not everyone will have this opportunity, but which has proper structure, where meritocracy works, where it's a performance-driven meritocracy, and there are structures. Decisions are not made because the owners want some decision. It is professionally run. So all those things are things some people, I think women will thrive in those environments, right? But it is not always so. I agree. But what women must do is they must never feel that they can't do anything they set their mind to. Never say die. I can do it. And I think that is something, it is nothing new. I think my mother is a classic example. I mean, she's a person, I mean, she takes no for answer, there's no way, right? I mean, even at 90, she will run saying that I can do these things and I will do these things. And so I think one of the things is you have to have that self-confidence in yourself to say, look, I can do this. And it is also nice if they have like-minded friends to support one another. And maybe reach out also to a mentor who can guide them. Right? The first thing I think that is required is confidence in ourselves. Right? That is speaking of us as individuals. But if you look at the society at large, there are a lot of work we need to do as a country to take people away from the notion that women have to be only homemakers, that they should not be working after 6 o'clock in the evening. So we have a lot of things to do, especially even in the area of legislation. I think there are so many things that we can, do to enable this whole culture of more women getting into work and also continuing to work their way up. So there's a lot of things to be done at that end, but everything starts with you. One has to be confident, and I think even our school system, our education system, all those things need to be re-geared to, fashion to say that all of us women can do as much as and as well as the men.
Thank you, Dilani.
Dilani, thank you for that. So we were in conversation with Dilani Alagaratnam, who has served in many honorary capacities during her career spanning over 30 years in the areas of tertiary and professional education, vocational education and training, reforms to Sri Lanka's administrative service and corporate governance, amongst others. This was an hour designed to bring inspiration through the backstories of modern day icons. So on that note, Dilani, to our audience, thank you for staying tuned, and I hope you've enjoyed this segment. We do have another interesting personality lined up for the segment next week, so do watch our social media space for the links to join in. If you've missed part of this conversation, it will be up on our YouTube channel. Do visit, do subscribe, do hit that notification button so you are updated. And remember to share. A shout out to our technology partners, H1. Thank you for going strong with us in our third season. And on that note, I bid you a wonderful rest of the day. Stay safe, stay productive.